In general, it turns my stomach a little bit when pastors go on trips or vacations only to return and subject their congregation to a kind of verbal slideshow of everything that happened. So I won't go into details, but our mission trip to Haiti this past week fits a little too well with our readings today not to mention it. One thing in particular struck me about Haiti. It's clear that the church is absolutely central to the life of their communities. Because they've struggled with corrupt and unstable governments, there are very few institutions that can be depended on to provide any kind of lasting support. And so there are literally hundreds of people who depend on the church for life, not for something to do, not as a social gathering, not as a place to fulfill an obligation, but as a place where they receive food and medicine and education and the necessities for life. And I have to say that it's easy to fall into a sense of pity for them, thinking that it's too bad that they're not as advanced as we are. It's too bad that they're not more independent. And maybe at a certain level that's true. And it is sad that they can't experience more stability in their country. But I also hope that we can see that this is a gift for the people of Haiti. It is a tremendous blessing that most of us here in the United States lack. We don't have the same level of material dependence on the church to help meet our needs. And so it's easier for us to lack a sense of dependence on the spiritual level, because we say in the back of our minds that we really don't need the church. We don't really need Christ, that we could get by without him. We can provide food for ourselves. We can go to work and raise our families. We can go on vacation and get adequate rest. And we can do it all without Christ, without the church. And it's true. We can do all those things and not give a single moment of thought to Christ or his church. And this is the curse of affluence. It is the illusion that we don't have to depend on anyone else. Because we don't need the church to feed us and shelter us, we can easily view our spiritual lives as just a nifty bonus to a life that we can otherwise manage on our own. And Christ is no longer necessary, but is merely a nice decoration or a facade to a building that we have constructed on our own, by ourselves. And not to go too far astray here, but this is why our upcoming capital campaign can't just be about windows and roofs and boilers. Because we can have all those things that work beautifully. But if they're not providing a home where people can encounter Christ, then they are completely useless. Or even worse, they give us the illusion that we are building something great when in fact we may be only building a monument to ourselves and our own accomplishments. Because there will come a time when that building that we try to build on our own, in our own lives for ourselves, that building will no longer exist. And we all know it, and we generally ignore it or distract ourselves from it, but it's a fact of reality. And this is why Jesus, in his great charity and tremendous love for us, says very clearly, whoever finds his life, in other words, whoever finds his life in himself and by himself and for himself will lose it. Because we can't sustain that life. We can't hold it in existence. And whoever loses his life for my sake, whoever puts his life at the service of discipleship, whoever gives his life to something that will last into eternity will find it. And so for those of us who don't struggle materially and don't have to depend on others in that way, the great challenge, and it's a big challenge, is to learn what it means to be dependent, to need others, to really need others, not just for social help, not just for people to hang out with, but to really need others. And Jesus helps us with this. To depend means to be open to receiving another person who gives us something that we can't give ourselves. And Jesus is the perfect example of this. He comes to offer us salvation, a gift that we can't give to ourselves. And so we are dependent on him in that way. You know, we visited a number of homebound parishioners during our time in Haiti who lived in mud huts with leaky tin roofs and no sign of electricity. And for them, Christ was not an abstract person. He was as concrete as us white people, bringing them from a distant land bags of food and to pray with them. And their gratitude, many of them that we visited went and took food that they had picked from their own trees and offered it to us. Their gratitude was a recognition that they needed this gift from someone else. And even these people in poverty, in abject poverty that we can't even begin to imagine in this community, that even from their poverty, they offered something because they needed to offer something. And I wonder for us if we recognize our need for what God offers us when we are approached by another person for help, when we are challenged by illness or depression, when we are confronted by the limits of our intelligence or creativity. Are those moments when we learn to depend, or are they only moments of frustration? This is a big question for us, because these are gifts that God gives to us in reality. A person begging on the side of the road is a gift for us, because were it not for the grace of God, we would be the one begging on the side of the road. When we experience illness in our lives, it is a gift from God, because it is a moment when we can recognize that we are dependent on other people to care for us. I mean, we learn this from our youth when we are young and we get sick, and there's nothing like mom's chicken noodle soup that helps us to get better. We are dependent. And so we need these gifts that God gives to us in reality that remind us of our need for others. And in this way, spiritual and even material poverty can be a great gift that open us up to what others can offer. So what kind of poverty do you need to experience in your life so that you can realize that you are not alone? What do you have? What do you love more than Jesus that's holding you back from loving him?